Welcome to Women in Power Active, an initiative started by UR Sportswear to empower women to find their own active adventure. I'm your host, Jacalyn Gross. Today we talk with CamE Tasker. She is an ultra runner. She is a skier. She's a snowshoer. She is an adventurer. And she also fights hard for combat vets to receive the medical care they need. I think you'll really enjoy this episode. Thank you for doing this.
Yeah.
I wanted to start with kind of like how you started and became like an active person, and like what sports were you like inspired by?
All right. So beginning with, I just always grew up being an athlete. I think I started very young at soccer and ballet and gymnastics. So probably like 4 years old for all those.
Wow.
And then I just kind of perfected soccer, I guess, if you will, and stuck with that. And went to private schools, so there really wasn't sports offered. So I did outside soccer with like just the community, and then ended up getting scouted at a young age doing soccer and was on an elite program for probably like 10 years. But I played about like 8 or 10 years ahead of where I was. So I was always like the baby on the team, which was kind of hard because I was just a little kid, but like I just loved soccer and I was pretty good at it. My dad was my coach for a long time, just kind of on the side, and very structured militant. He's an ex-FBI agent. He mainly coached my brother, but just along the way again, like because I was an athlete, he kind of just stuck by me and was like, this is how you do it. And that was just kind of like I succeeded most in soccer. So I kind of gave up the other sports because I was doing just regular like community gymnastics. I quit ballet when I was young because I was better at gymnastics and soccer. And then I was doing elite programs as well, like on teams. So I was traveling the state at a young age, probably 7 to like 14, and programs around the state for gymnastics and soccer. And I kind of had to choose one when I got into high school because it was like, you need to focus. And then also got into basketball and fast pitch. I was in private schools my whole life until high school. So it was the first time I could actually be in sports of all kinds. But soccer was kind of my main thing because I've been doing it my whole life. And then I played in college and then joined the military. And that was a very structured environment as well. And played in soccer, got into the military, and was pretty athletic with the military. So succeeded because of that level. And then ended up getting shipped to Iraq with an infantry unit out of the blue, which was kind of crazy. And got injured and came home and needed some kind of outlet. I just started going out on the trails and like walking, and I would then hike, and then I would start jogging, and then start running. And it was kind of like my whole body needed to be put back together after my accident.
Can you go back to the accident and kind of like describe what happened?
What it was my Humvee caught on fire on a mission, and I was trapped inside it, and I couldn't get out. My vehicle was on fire, and my door, the combat lock, is like a suction that you push down. So you lock the door, and then you push the suction cup down that keeps the door sucked on. So if you get hit by an IED, a bomb, your door doesn't blow off, right? Well, this was stuck shut, this combat lock. And I had told our chief before we left for our mission that day that the vehicle was deadline because the door wasn't opening. And he basically told me to shut the F up and get in the vehicle, and we'd fix it at Taji, which was about a 7-hour drive. And I just had a really bad feeling something bad was really going to happen. And I did what he said, and less than 20 minutes later, this vehicle caught on fire underneath the passenger seat, which is where the battery is for the vehicle. And I was trapped inside, and everyone else evacuated. My gunner hopped out of the gunner's hatch, our medic hopped out of the back, and the passenger who was our staff sergeant on duty, he hopped out, and then the other person hopped out of the back, and I was just stuck in there fighting for my life to get out. And I ended up getting pulled out of the gunner's hatch, but I still had the seatbelt on, so he was ripping me out. There's like a hand pull on the back of your armor vest, and he was just pulling me. I think that's how I slipped the disc in my spine, but busted up both my elbows and my wrists and my spine during that mission. And it was just like, I didn't get any treatment years. Like, I think it was like 4 years from my accident before I had my first surgery. I've had 15 since then, just redoing my elbows, arms, my spine, like all of that. This is why I'm advocating, and I want to keep advocating because I got in just to pay my college tuition back. So I got into the military to be an officer and do a deployment as an officer. I had a bachelor's of criminal justice when I got in 2005. And then within a couple of years, I had a master's of forensic psychology, which there gave me a direct commission pin for my officer. And so I decided to do that 2 years in and got transferred a couple from my unit. That was a engineering company where I was doing chemical. I was a chemical specialist. It was called NBC at the time, which is nuclear, biological, and chemical. So I got transferred to a medical company in an environmental officer position. I was waiting for my direct commission pin. And then I was going to go to school when the rest of my brigade deployed to Iraq. So I would go for 6 months to Texas and then meet up with them for 6 months in Iraq. So that would be my whole year deployed, half in Texas, half to Iraq. Well, at my pinning ceremony, they pinned me with my Sergeant E5. And in the military, you're enlisted and your officer run parallel to each other. And normally officers are more educated, like the people that have gone to college, and enlisted are the people that just kind of have a high school degrees. That's kind of, it's not always true, but if you think about it, and technically most people that are enlisted have not had college degrees, and most people that are officers have had college degrees. So I was trained to go officer, and I got pinned enlisted, and they told me I was going to Iraq as an infantryman. I was getting attached infantry, and I was just like, what is going on? This is not why I moved to this medical company. I'm in an environmental officer select, spot. What's happening? They kept telling me they're going to get me out of it before we deployed. We were going to Fort McCoy, Wisconsin, to do our pre-mobilization training, which is learning how to be an infantryman for 90 days. And they said, before we pre-mob, we'll get you out of this. You'll be on your way. Da, da, da. Well, the day everybody left, they're like, sorry, you're stuck. You're going. How can you do this? We had, I thought, the contract. How did I get moved? And they said, well, we'll go for your officer when you get home and you've proved yourself. And I was just like, what? I've been in 4 years. I've proved myself. What do you mean? Yeah. I've been a platoon sergeant as an E4 specialist. So I've already been working up 3 pay grades for the last few years, doing an amazing job as a leader. And it was just wild. I got shipped off. And my whole life went upside down at that point because the pay difference is about $50,000. So I had planned for a year away making $80,000 technically about that. As an enlisted man, I only made 34. And I was in combat getting shot at every day. Not only did I get trauma, a huge anxiety disorder, I came home and was just in a ton of debt, and I lost the house that I was renting to own, which is why I went to Iraq, was to come home and buy my house that I'd been renting for 6 years. And it's just everything went upside down when I came home, and I ended up having to give up my home and put everything in storage. And I lived out of my car essentially for 2 years with a box of medical records trying to get help. And the company I got attached to didn't do my paperwork correctly, or have a line of duty form for every body part that gets injured during combat deployment, any kind of military injury. You supposed to have a line of duty for every body part. And my medical company, the medical team in my company, let the ball drop and never did any of my line of duty forms. So I came home with tons of medical records showing I'd been treated and got injections and this happened and this happened. But because I didn't have those line of duties, it said it wasn't military related. I had to wait about 6 years after coming home before I found a doctor that would actually take the time. He spent 12 hours with me and wrote a line of duty for every body part so I could actually get this on the record and get it taken care of. Because when I came home, I wasn't a part of the VA at all. I didn't know how to get fixed. And the Army pretty much shunned me, and they're like, you weren't there. And I had a lot of things on the wall that where I was and the time limit, but my unit or the brigade, I don't know what happened, but anywhere between the Army and the National Guard, when I was going on off of active duty and coming back onto guard, it got all messed up, and they blamed each other. The Army blamed the Guard, and the Guard blamed the Army, and I'm sitting here going, I need medical care. What am I supposed to do? And from what I found out just a couple of years ago, somebody covered it up, my accident, and had to figure out how to survive in life and how to get taken care of without the health care. Because VA is all I have for the rest of my life now. And that's what people don't know is if you're stuck with this system, I can't go out and get another coverage. So if I can't get another coverage, I want to change it. And I want to be the change I wish to see in the world. So that's why I'm fighting for that. I'm in the boat where we're stuck here. It's either this or Medicare, and I'm nowhere near 65. So it doesn't work for me. If I have a bill for $300, I'm paying $270 of it because of my age. And I can't imagine being an 18-year-old. You'd be paying 100%. Like, how is that coverage? It's not. I just am bringing awareness to everything, and I want to help people, and then also just change the laws and change the stigma around PTSD. And that's how I became, my nonprofit became Running for Combat Veterans. And it was just a nonprofit basically to share what I'd learned, my knowledge, I guess, and lifestyle change, and how I got to where I was in the running community, being able to run and place in races. Started getting healthcare funding, meaning running races. Began with a GoFundMe at first, and then when the nonprofit came through a year later, then the donations went to the nonprofit. And so I've got a separate account for that, and essentially it's getting healthcare funds for people that are waiting on the VA and can't pay like a bill. So if somebody's got an MRI to be done and that's holding up their healthcare for a year, we'll pay that bill for them. They just have to apply. And it's pretty easy. It's just a DD-214 form, which is what you get out of the military with. You just have to have honorable discharge and send us your bill, and we'll apply, and we'll try to help you pay that. So that's kind of what it's been.
You said you were like very structured when you were like growing up and all throughout adulthood. Like, trail running for me specifically was very unstructured because I was a track runner, mostly the 800. So it was like really like, oh, I'm going to stop my watch when we stop. Mm-hmm. Even though we're going to be like hiking up this hill, like I need to stop my watch because we're not actually running. So like this is all very, very unstructured activity. So is like photography. So did you find that you were just like really leaning into that after you got out of the military?
I really just love photography in general, and people have been very kind, and they've always said you take great photos, and I would get hired for just random gigs. And I think it just began like that. And for photography and for running, same thing. Started just running in 2012 with a girlfriend of mine, and we did a trail running series called the Bellingham Trail Running Series. It was a race series of 6 trail races in the Bellingham area. And we both placed in that competition, like 3rd and 4th or something like that. And we're like, okay, let's come back and do it next year. And I'd never run before in the mountains. I just kind of tootled around or walked or hiked and then ran down. And I guess that's kind of what running how it began for me. And just kind of kept doing more and more, and pretty much started getting in the best shape of my life to go into my surgery. I thought ultra running was running the whole time, and I'm like, how do they run up like a 7,000-foot mountain, Right. But it's power hiking and power running, and there's not a huge structure to it other than time on your feet. I mean, really, it's time on your feet. That's what training is. And it's, if you're going to do ultras, it's time on your feet with weight on your body. It's really not that difficult of a task as long as you can figure out a program, like just get into the swing of things. And if you get to a level where you don't know, like my last race before I technically retired was a 200-mile mountain race. At that point, because I'd not even run 100 at that point, I was like, well, I should probably, consult with a coach and just make sure I'm doing the right things. And it took me 16 weeks to get ready for that. So it wasn't a huge deal to me, but I just wanted to make sure I was training the right way, and had me squared away, and like everything he gave me helped me to succeed with that race. And it was the Bigfoot 200 in 2019. And I got eighth female. So I did awesome. Incredible weather. So just to finish that race that year was incredible in itself. And then to do fairly decent I felt blown away. I wasn't sure if I would finish something like that, but it was incredible. Yeah, I didn't have any issues other than blisters. It was the best race. I had a blast.
Wow.
So, yeah.
How do you train for a 200-mile race?
You do your normal training for like a 50K and then a 50 miler. And then at that point, it's kind of like how much time you put in on, like you said, on your feet with weight every single day. And at the last probably month and a half, I was just spending a lot of time up all day long on my feet with like I'd wear a backpack around and go into the grocery store and it'd have some bricks in it. And like, it was just like, it was what it was. Just time on your feet, moving around, no matter if you're running or going slow. snow. And at that point, I also had an incline treadmill. So I did some overnighters, like doing like 12 hours on the thing, just climbing. Like it was like a 40% grade, I think. So I'd climb for a while and then decline for a while and just watch movies and do overnight type activities. But kind of like staying up on your feet with weight on myself. Wasn't that hard of training. I did spend a lot of time doing the training, like when I had workouts that were like, you're going to do 7,000 feet today and 20 miles. And then the next day you're going to do 4 and 10 miles. You know, it was just
Right.
like, it was a lot. And then I'd have some time off. And then, so I mean, that part I was very grateful for my coach because I never would have thought of all this. But I also don't train like everyone else. And I do a lot of different activities, gym work, HIIT classes. I'll do deep water running sometimes. And I did a lot of heat training, which is hot tub and sauna work. Really helps with your cardio, which people don't know. Heat training is a huge thing to learn. And during that race, we were supposed to be in 100-degree temperatures. We were like in 40. So I was overtrained for the cardio, but I was freezing the whole time because I was planning on heat, right? So that was the weird part, was like I was freezing because it rained almost the whole time. But it's just learning how to run the race in the kind of temperatures you're planning for. Kind of how you learn to run ultra run. It's just pick the race, the time of year, find out, train for the race you're gonna run.
So when you said like the sauna and the hot tub, like are you doing like activities in there or like?
It's pretty much it's the heat on you. So in the hot or in the like pool or hot tub, you've got like the weight, deep water running, or even just in the hot tub, it raises your temperature and everything. And like, I don't know how it really does it, but your lungs like expand and like easier for you to breathe. When you are running, you don't have that like shock to your system of like heat when you're exposed to high temperatures for a long period of time. I've not versed on exactly how it does it to you, but all I know is it works.
Yeah.
A couple of like mountain races, one international mountain race in Greece also, and just by doing that, those two things, like extra adding the heat training, it's like, and deep water running. I never would have thought that. It makes you train like you're running mountains and you're not. It's weird.
Yeah. What is deep water running? I haven't heard of that.
Yeah, so you put a belt on and some weights on your ankles, and you can run. I did a lot of ladder training workouts. So you like run a minute and you take 30 seconds off, and then you run 2 minutes, you take 30 seconds off, 3 minutes, and you go up to like 10 minutes, maybe 12 minutes, and then you turn around and do the backwards. So it's like a 2 or an hour and a half like run in the pool, and it equals like a long run, like 4 or 5 hours on the mountain. Pretty incredible. So I did that when I was coming back from my lower body injuries. So I've had now 16 major surgeries and about 90 injection procedures on my back. So I was coming back from ankle and hip surgery during that time when I was doing a lot of deep water running. So I didn't have as much pounding on the pavement. Well, I don't really pavement run, but on the trails. I wasn't pounding so much. I was doing like half of my time trail running in the pool and then the other half on the trails. And it just like helped me to train the same amount as far as cardio and not fall behind. So it's a pretty incredible way to learn to train.
Yeah, I definitely want to try it. I've done aqua jogging, but I've never.
Yeah, it's sort of the same. Just all these different kinds of workout. For what I was doing with the long endurance runs, the ladder training is the best workout I found for me, just for training out the long workout. But there are so many, yes, aqua jogging. If you look into it, there's probably like 5 or 6 different workouts you can do for short run days, for speed workouts, all that kind of stuff.
For that 200-mile race, what was like the hardest part for you?
I think day 3, going into the night, my feet, so it was supposed to be like 90 plus degrees and really dry and warm. It's around Mount St. Helens during August. So it's supposed to be a really hot race, right? Yeah. And like the heavens opened up the first night and we had snow and hail and rain and wind, and it was freezing, and we had like 3 whole days of rain, which is unheard of. And it was like 40 degrees, and we were planning for like, 90s, 100, and I'd done heat training. So I was just freezing, and what it was my blisters. Like I'd never had more than one, and that was at boot camp. I had 1 blister in boot camp. So I had probably like 15 to 30 on each foot. Like they were on top of, like the heel had a huge one the first night, a second one growing over it, and the third night a third one. And like every toe in between every crevice underneath. I mean, I had so many blisters. and you can't like pop them because they'll get infected. So every aid station, they would just wrap more tape on it and stuff. So like literally every step on night 3, and I was doing a lot of downhill that night, like probably like 8,000 feet of downhill.
Yeah.
And every step going downhill, my heels are the last thing to hit, and that's where all the huge blisters were. So I think that third night was like the hardest. I had one of my girlfriends, Natalia, with me, and I was just like, I was going down the mountains backwards with my poles, like my lucky poles, just like crying. And she's like, you can do this. And I had contemplated actually dropping because my feet felt like I was stepping on razor blades every step. It was so painful, but nothing else hurt the entire race, not at all. So just getting through that night and that massive downhill, that third night was the hardest and mentally. And my friend Natalia helped me get through that because I was like, that was my lowest for sure. After I popped through that day and got like a 15-minute power nap after that section of trail, I was just like, whoop. Here we are again, we're done. And the like 4th day, it was sunny and gorgeous, and that was like the finale. I was like, yes, I did it. I think I finished that in like 86 hours and 43 minutes, which, I mean, I really could have finished that like 10 or 12 hours sooner, maybe more than that. But just like that first night, every time I tried to leave the aid station, a new storm would start, and it was like torrential downpour, and everybody was like, no. Like, I think that first night, over half the people dropped from both this. I think there was a 60 miler or 60K. So it was like, I think a 40 miler. And then there was the 200. And I think half of the people dropped for the 200 that night, like, or at least a good, probably close to half. Because it was, I mean, the storm was incredible. Like, the heavens just opened up. Like, I don't know how to explain it if you weren't there. The people, like our crew, couldn't even get to us. The roads were so bad. Yeah. So like, I didn't even see my crew or get any of my food for like a day and a half because like they couldn't get to me. I was starving because I was like trying to eat really healthy. I have an autoimmune disease, so I have to be careful with gluten and dairy. And like at the aid stations, I didn't have much I could eat. So I had like 2 huge coolers of my own food and then two crew, like sets of crew. And I didn't see any of them for like a day and a half. So I was just starving at one point. I managed, I think every time I was at the aid station, I ate hot dogs and mustard, and I never ever eat mustard ever. Like, I just had something I was craving. It was so weird.
Yeah.
Well, I probably ate like 30 hot dogs that whole race. It was just like, that's what I want. I'd be eating one, and like my crew would be like, what do you want? I'm like, will you give me another hot dog? They're like, you have one in your hand. And I'd be like, one bite, and they're like, I'll get you another one.
Yeah, it's probably that salt, and then like mustard's good for cramps too, right? So
I don't know. My body, like, the thing with being clean green is like your body craves what you want, like what it needs. I mean,
yeah.
And like, I'll eat things I've never liked or eaten. Like, I never eat potato chips, and like potato chips that are like salt and vinegar. I crave those. Like, just like I never touch them in real life, but just like exactly, it's like what your body craves as far as salt. And like, I love pickles and like pickle juice. I'm always like, can you give me a couple pickle juice? Like, it's so random, but that's what I like when I'm running. I don't know.
The thing is like the cars couldn't get to you. You're like, I'm running to this. Yeah. And cars can't get to me. Like, I'm tougher than cars right now. Like,
yeah. I was, that first night, when the storm hit, I was at the bottom of Mount Margaret, which was our huge climb. That's when the storm hit, was right at the section when you're going up Mount Margaret. Yeah. So we were climbing this in hail and snow and torrential downpour and lightning, trying to figure out if they should stop the race. It was like, we have lightning, and a gal like almost got hit and got thrown off a mountain, and they had to find her. Like, it was a wild night, and like it wasn't going to go out alone. And I went to go 3 times, and I kept, every time I'd get everything on, I'd go out and it would just and blow me back in, and I'm like, I'm not going. And finally, the 3rd time I went to try, these 2 gentlemen were in the tent where I was trying to nap, and we all got up at the same time. I'm like, are you going out there? They're like, yeah. And I was like, can I go with you? I'm scared. And I like can't believe my A asked, B said that, and C, they said, yeah, come along. And these guys ended up being my like trail angels the entire race. Every time my crew wasn't with me, or like we couldn't get to each other, I'd turn around and they'd be coming into the aid station, or they'd be getting ready to leave right when I was. And every single time I didn't have my crew, these 2 gentlemen, James and Mike, my angels, and I became so close with them, and we spent the whole 4 days together. And a guy named Rob as well, Rob Steger. Rob, Mike DeRitter, and James DeLorme, we just became this tight-knit little group, and we ran a lot of the race together. It was pretty incredible. Made some amazing friends for life. Like, very cool.
Yeah, I love like trail racing in that way, because it's like it's such a good community. Like running track or like running cross country, it's just nothing like doing like trail races. People are just so kind. They're like, oh, do you need a goo, like, or like nutrition or something like that? Are you okay? Like during the race, and I'm like, oh no, I'm good. I have stuff. Like, like it's such a great community.
It is. You make the best friends, and I mean, everybody has a story, and everybody's there for a reason. And when you're on a long race like that, you've got time to find out who everybody is. And I think that's what makes it such a great community is, again, everybody has a story, and they're doing this for their own personal reason. And it's just like getting to know everybody and learning why you're actually here. It was an awesome experience all around. I'm so glad I did it.
What got you to that point where you're like, I'm not going to stop running?
I've been that way since I was born. I don't know. Like, I don't give up. And like my family just as structured it as it was, like giving up was never an option. Like, I wasn't allowed. And I really believe that.
I know you have struggled with mental health. What are some things that you do to kind of like manage that?
Even if I'm having a really rough day, I try to get outside for at least 15 minutes. An hour is ideal. Just spend some time outside, whether it's gardening, mowing the lawn, going for a walk, going for a bike ride. Even just spending time with a friend at the beach. Like, you don't have to walk. You don't have to be super active. Just getting outside and taking some breaths of fresh air. I also found that I had a really hard time like learning how to breathe, doing any kind of breath work. I think it made me kind of like panic a bit because my PTSD is around like being in a vehicle and being claustrophobic. For me, breath work was hard, and I got into doing yoga. And during the pandemic, I also added that to my nonprofit. I want to teach trauma-informed yoga to people in general, anyone that's been traumatized. I think breath work helps a lot. Yeah, I think moving and breath work is the best thing ever, no matter how you're doing it. So just getting some time outside and learning how to breathe, and taking time for yourself. Also, the biggest thing is eating healthy. And I know a lot of people don't think they have any kind of common denominator, but what you're putting in your body is making you feel the way you feel. Eating healthy, getting some time outdoors, and breathing, breath work, movement of the body flowing. Lots of resources out there. I can help out anybody who wants to email me. So it's kind of what you're interested in. But I would just say healthy movement and healthy eating is like the main starter for anyone to like change how you're feeling and how your body feels.
Can you talk a little bit more about trauma-informed yoga? Like, how is that different than yoga we're familiar with?
So I went through a yoga teacher training program during the pandemic and did one course in TCTSY, which is the trauma-informed training. And I'd like to eventually get more under my belt. So a lot of positions in yoga, I think people get challenged because like even the downward dog, you've got your booty in the air,
Yeah.
It's like a lot of people that have been victimized are not comfortable with those positions, especially if there's like a male or a female behind them. It's of a different gender. More or less the way you're speaking to your group. You're using more safe words and I guess intentional about your wording. And about how like you're going to talk to everybody ahead of your class to understand like kind of where their traumas are and what their triggers are. And you're being more mindful about that. So it's just a different way of speaking that helps everyone feel safe and in their environment and still enjoy the practice and feel like coming back and not feeling like they're outcasted because they can't move like this or don't feel comfortable moving like that.
That's really cool. I actually went to a yoga class in Texas, and they had these like little chips that you could put on your yoga mat if you didn't want somebody to touch you.
Yes.
And I thought that was the first time I actually saw that. I was like, that is such a good idea.
Yeah. And that's it. They're in charge of their own practice.
That kind of goes into our final question, which is like words of empowerment that you would give our listeners, whether it be to yourself when you were younger or to somebody else, your friend, your sister, your coworker, whatever.
Yeah, I say empower yourself. You are your own best friend through your whole life. You have to get a great relationship with yourself. I think the biggest thing in life is like exposing every truth that you may be hiding, whether you're scared of telling people the truth or whatever. You have to be very honest with yourself and know who you are and make that relationship with yourself number one in the world. Like that you have to, because every other relationship follows the one you have with yourself. So that's number one. And then lifestyle, like healthy lifestyle, just movement every day and eating healthy, and like it will change your life. I mean, it really, really will. And yeah, just staying positive and knowing you can get through anything. You just have to put your mind to it and know you can do it. And it's the relationship you have with yourself. It's number one. It's key to everything else you've got going.
Do you have any, you said your website earlier, but any other plugs? Go ahead.
We've got runningforcombatveterans.org, and that's our website. And then we've got a social media, Facebook and Instagram. So it's also Running for Combat Veterans on Facebook. And then Instagram is just my name, which is CamE Tasker. It's spelled like CamE. Last name Tasker, but it's all together, CamE Tasker. And then when you go on it, it'll say Running for Combat Veterans.
That's awesome. Is there anything, like, if anybody wants to help, like, what could they do to help?
Help or ask for help.
That's another good one. Yeah. So if they want to ask for help, or if people want to support you, Running for Combat Veterans, what would be the biggest thing that could help you?
Yeah. So we have CrowdRise. Well, when I started, it was called CrowdRise, and now it's gone back to GoFundMe, is the platform for a 501c3 nonprofit. So we are a nonprofit. We do have an EIN number. Everything's on our webpage. I guess just donating for veterans that are applying for medical care. With the pandemic hitting, a lot of people lost funding, and I did too. I ended up having to do a move and shutting down my office and my PO box. So it's just kind of like I'm still transitioning, trying to figure out where I'm going with the nonprofit, but my goals are still the same. And the ultimate goal is getting into DC and changing the healthcare system as far as reforming the laws. And then if you're looking for help with a bill, there's paperwork on our webpage. You can either fill it out online and email it back, or scan it and email it back and apply. And basically, you just send a DD-214, you send the bill, and you ask for help. Anybody has anything to share with us or with myself, or any ideas or how to connect with anybody doing what we're trying to do, which is get into Washington and to help effectively change the VA system and to give veterans faster healthcare that actually works in a timely fashion, where there aren't all these delays. And then just any kind of resources for veterans, I'd say reach out. There's contact us. We have a Gmail account that's also runningforcombatveterans.org at gmail.com. So there's ways to connect, and we'd be super grateful to hear anything that comes our way.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, CamE. I appreciate you. I appreciate your time.
You too.
So great to meet you.
You too. Thanks so much.
You can follow me personally at Jacalyn Gross. That's JACALYNGROSS, to check out any of my adventures that I've been going on, long run photos mostly. You can follow UR Sportswear. That's the letter U, the letter R, Sportswear. And if you want to check out any of our products, go to ursportswear.com. Thank you for listening.